our guest is Christian. Christian is an expert in corporate innovation, corporate venturing in particular, I think. And the format today is without slides, which is kind of normal, right? When we walk into a cafe and we want to talk with someone, we don't bring the laptop and the slide deck to the table. So let's make it in something informal. Let's talk about venturing, in particular inside large organizations. And I think we are really curious because Christian works in a very large organization that by default, I guess, struggles to innovate because it's a very competitive space, but due to COVID-19, I think that airlines are probably struggling even more, in particular to find new ventures, new business models. I don't know how this conversation will go, but my hope is that we can all participate, ask questions, and make something informal and valuable for all of us. But Christian, over to you, and thank you very much for your time. You are a very busy man. So obrigado, and let's do it.
No, you're welcome.
Okay, so sorry, just getting more people in here. All right, so the title of your presentation is quite interesting. I think people are curious about what do you mean by nails and everything looks like a nail. Yeah, let's start with the title, and from there, let's rock.
Yeah, sure. So I mean, this all came from the conversation we had on LinkedIn, right? I mean, I knew the Innovation Cafe was happening with a lot of interesting people and a couple of my peers as well. So I've been following this for some time, and then thanks for asking. You said like, hey, how about you do a session at that time? And I was just I think going to work, was in the train, and had all these things in my head and what is happening right now within our field and innovation and so many things, and kind of fed up as well because the pressure at the moment is super high on us innovators, because we know that in times of crisis, normally the big corporates or those that are resilient should invest in innovation, right? This is clear for us. What happens normally is completely the opposite, right? Short-term, mid-term goals, securing the today is in the focus. And then you find all these studies about who invests in R&D and gets the most of innovation, and a lot of consulting companies reach out to you saying like, hey, we have this and that, and at the end it's the same game always, right? And I think when you're an innovator, or trying to if you have a startup, you're driven by the vision you have, right? You just pull it through and you go through. But in the corporate, you have so many different ends where you have to battle again, that we sometimes get confused, and maybe reaching out to whatever we can get, we try to water through these very wild waters at the moment. So what I find with a lot of peers from me at the moment is say, let's try this, let's do an accelerator, incubator, venture builder, so whatever you CVC, let's try this, right? Just trying to get the hell out of there. Whereas I think I learned within this crisis, the world will look very much different when we come out of this crisis. All the things we knew that could add value or were valuable in the past will not work anymore, right? So anybody starting now an incubator, accelerator, CVC innovation unit has to think very differently on how to approach the world we will emerge in, right? Because customer demand shifts, the habits are very different. So a lot of things we learned in the past are just not valid anymore, right? We lost the sense for whom are we innovating, right? The sense for our company, which we're living in. And in corporate innovation, it's also not the time to keep on doing what we were doing, but to step back and say, okay, now I have to see with my unit, what kind of value can we deliver in the short term, which is 18 to 24 months. Take a look at the portfolio, what have we done, and shut down those things that were not really going somewhere, which we're just doing to explore, and keep those that really could add any value. So do a portfolio cleaning, and also recap on why were things successful and why were other things not successful, right? And this is what I was referring to, that we're just, if we're trying to look for opportunities, we're trying to find something that will work, instead of now really going one thing back, taking time for us and thinking strategically, what is the world going to look like when we're out of this? So in the sense of me and my current context with our company, right, we do aircrafts, severely hit by the crisis, right? Our customers are struggling. So it might be very, very, very prominent now to think like, should we innovate like we did in the past, or do we need a complete different approach? And that's actually something we are heavily identifying, building, and architecturing to be more resilient in terms of innovation for the next crisis that will come. Because this crisis is actually, and I think that's also a mindset of an entrepreneur or an innovator, that we have the capacity to think of crises as this, as an opportunity, right? And this is a great opportunity to cut the bullshit, right? Stop with things corporates, consulting companies, or anything else we're wasting money in, demo days, hackathons, all that stuff, that didn't add any value. Because if you have an investor, which is a company, at the end, he wants to see revenue, right? And all the other things like cultural transformation or exploring then become a little bit more into the background. And this will not be the last crisis. But what we've seen now is that crises tear down entire innovation units of big companies. So that's my appell. Like, if you think that you had a plan starting 2020, shove it down the trash, and think it really differently if you want to survive the next year. So you caught me in a moment about thinking what could be valuable, and it's easy to defocus, right? It's easy to say, well, okay, startups, so an accelerator, that will solve my problem. Or now let's start something fancy, venture studio, venture building, that will solve my problem. But there's no one size fits all, right? You have to decide at the end and know your customer at the end, your investor, your corporation, how you can add value. So that was kind of the background of this of the title.
So can I ask, are you trying to say that somehow the innovation as we know it, or the methods to innovate in large organizations, are somehow broken? Do we need to reinvent how we innovate in large organizations? Because I do agree there's a lot of innovation theater out there. Innovation labs are popping up, are popular, beanbags here and there. But we've talked about this before, hackathons, open innovation events. End of the day, it's also a consulting business, because many innovation consultancies are providing this type of services. But is it working? Is this the model the model that we need, or we need something different?
Yeah, I don't think we have to reinvent anything, right? Because we have the right tools there, and good consulting companies have brought in some processes that are very effective, right? If we go into business design, it's something that is a repeatable process to de-risk stuff with a high probability of success or no success, right? Even here, we know the statistics, 1 out of 10 will get there, will survive, which is natural. So I think we have all the processes there. But I think, like, as we did not have this sense of urgency and the sense of pressure the last years, we know that there are processes, we learned the processes, but we did not stick to the processes, right? Like creating a hypothesis and then gathering evidence for a go-to market. This is something that within my lines, within other companies, I have seen like, yeah, we did it, we kind of did it, right? But I'm pretty sure the customer will love this, right? So that's nothing where you base on then putting millions of euros into something. So what I'm saying is not that we reinvent, but that we refocus and really maintain a hard focus. And there are only a couple of things now which we can do, which we will be doing the next couple of years, that will add value, because now is not the time to come with, you know what, we build aircrafts, but we also going to do this new Tinder application, right? Those times are over, and those times are gone to do something that is very far away from the core business. So I would say refocus and really use them tools we have developed. Corporate venturing is very young. It's not a field like finance, like HR, like engineering, which we are doing since 50 years, but it's a repeatable process. You need to apply. And I mean, not everybody, I would say it's also hard for corporates to capture entrepreneurial talent, right? Because the processes and the structure within a big company do not leave you the freedom to really do what you want to do, like entrepreneurs would. But again, to innovate within a large corporation, you do not necessarily be an ex-entrepreneur. There's a lot you can learn about, right? So come back to the repeatable process. Still having the passion to make a change is the second ingredient. And then the third one, which still has to be established, is to find an incentive model for those people. If you build something great within a company, you are allowed to go out to the market, get external funding, and then become the CEO of your company, right? Big companies as ours, they have great technology, but not that savvy on business design. I think it's this end-to-end process that is missing, coming from where do we want to really be, where do we want to get, and then picking the right tools, right? For some, a venture builder makes sense. For some, maybe a real good accelerator program, I don't know if I would call it like that, but it makes sense. But picking the right ingredients for where you wanna go, and it all starts with the same question, like, why the hell would you want to do that, right? There's a reason for everything. So
yeah, and you mentioned the sense of urgency or the lack of a burning platform, and that sometimes, or most of the time, is the reason why all the bets go into incremental innovation in not more something more uncertain, radical, breakthrough, disruptive innovation. And I was wondering today what telco operators are doing, because Elon Musk is betting a lot of money into Starlink, which means I will probably be able to connect myself to the internet without using a local provider. And I guess they are pretty comfortable. If people probably at an aviation, I'm going to call it aviation company just to simplify, such as Airbus. People were thinking everybody will always buy airplanes. This is our business model. But the question is, can we reinvent a telco operator? Can we reinvent Airbus? Or some businesses, in your opinion, will probably one day decline and die, such as products? Or probably you guys need to invest, or telco operators need to invest a lot more in business models, not just in the bread and butter of what they do, and incremental innovation in R&D.
So I mean, it's really hard for today's giants to think about the future, right? Because we have a profitable business model today, right? It's not a structural problem with traveling at the moment. This will come back. Telco is also necessary for the human being to connect, to be aware and to consume. So it is really hard for big corporates then to think, why should I think about what will come in 30 to 40 years? I have a profitable business model today, which is working, which is operationally, and which is also made to defend its business model against things coming from outside, which naturally innovation is, right? It's something that is not belonging to the core company. So you will always have the corporate antibodies, always battling against anything coming from outside, new business models, startups, whatsoever, people that think differently. So you will always have that. Now, again, here's the opportunity, right? I mean, the COVID taught us now that maybe relying on one single product or one single service is not that smart. So what you see now is that this closed job is actually opening up out of two reasons. One is that understanding that we will not get there alone, right? If we have a bold ambition to stay with let's stay with a real life example where we are at the moment. If we say we want to fly zero emission in 2035, this is nothing we will do alone. We might bring the technology, we know how to do it, but there's a whole ecosystem around us, which is also very very unknown for us. So we need partners there. This can be startups, this could be other companies. So it's slowly breaking up, at least to be open from the outside. Now the difference to the attackers today. I mean, there's a couple of things that need to be understood when thinking about a business model of creating an aircraft. Getting the technology is the barrier to entry is very low, right? And if you have enough money, you can certainly do it. The barrier to entry now is within certification, right? So you're going to see volocopters flying, doing their test flights, and it's great technologies, and they have the platform, which are certainly very advanced as well. But this is an asset that big companies have, is that they have been certifying things for 50 years. So this is something where now this advantage can be used. Of course, if you only rely on this advantage, it's not enough. Now, if you say, okay, I combine this advantage on how to certify electric vertical takeoff and landing vehicles, combined with mass production of these vehicles, which we are also not known in. Building an aircraft is not like building a car. If you combine those two things, then you really have this competitive advantage. You just have to see the market where it's going, and then be brave enough to pursue it, cut out the politics around it, get funding, and then create the market, which is faster for a startup. But at the end, if as a corporate you manage to build up the wave, it can be much more powerful when it breaks, as when you have to make the market from the ground up, right? And you have to take the right strategic decision today to fulfill the next 30 years. And the normal entrepreneur like Musk, who just said, I'm gonna build a rocket and get it back, reuse it, it's not the normal thing. There are very, very few people that think like that and want to take that risk and are able to raise that funds to do it. It's good that they do it, because they show where the limits are. I think the big blocker is in its system itself, not in the technical capabilities, not in the market, but in those huge structures we have created ourselves. And that's a little bit what I was referring at the beginning. Before we start any innovation lab or accelerator incubator, let's look inside our own structures if we are even innovation ready. If you don't set the ground zero to be innovation ready, to be fast, to be secure, to be open, better don't start.
Guys, feel free to unmute and ask questions, or else it's just the two of us.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
What are the airlines asking today to a company like Airbus? So besides lighter aircrafts and less fuel consumption, I think we all know that, but what is exactly your, let's say, the request that you're getting from this from the airlines, what they expect from you?
Yeah, I mean, what started already before the crisis is this flight shaming movement, right? And everybody was talking about sustainability, about green, our planet, and below 2 degrees, right? The climate pact. We had the Paris pact, and I mean, aircrafts or airlines are, you could say, only responsible for 3-4% of the global warming, but still, right? There is something. So what airlines are, I would say, probably now hypothetical, because I'm not gonna disclose here any information, but I could imagine that they would request to really go into sustainable development of aviation, right? That everybody can travel whenever you want without leaving a heavy climate footprint on the ground, because it's effective for long range flights. If you go into shorter range flights, certainly taking another means of transport is more climate neutral, right? So that's what the airlines might be troubling, like people deferring to trains or even personal transport instead of taking the aircraft. Now, also business people are now under pressure for the whole company to have a climate neutral setting for that. That's why the only way going forward actually was, okay, we build an aircraft that flies zero emission in 2035. I don't know if you have seen it, but there are 3 really beautiful demonstrators, Zero E, which will be the next generation of aircrafts. Still, until then, we're going to sell the current aircrafts, right? So you have to think about climate neutrality as a whole. Same as with the car industry. We're still going to have diesel. You're still going to have fuel cars. You're going to have electric cars, but that under the total, you're climate neutral, and that's your supply chain. That is how you produce things. That is how you consume things, right? These big enterprises need to think as a whole. So that is one thing that is a no-brainer and a minimum requirement, right? People should be able to travel without consuming our Earth, right? The second one are go more into effectiveness, right? And that you really operationally are so excellent that the biggest value an aircraft adds is when it's permanently in the air, right? And downtimes, reparation costs are things that are very, very expensive for airlines, and that get very, very expensive by if you sum it up. So that is another thing that they're demanding, and the number one is safety, right? Building an aircraft is not like building a toothbrush. If we're 99.9% secure, it's not enough. You have to be minimum of 100% safe. Otherwise, well, so what happened in the past? Lives are at risk. So that is the thing. And I told it like a couple of minutes before. I don't think it's many people ask me, I don't think it's a structural problem with aircraft for traveling. And I say, well, it might be. I mean, it will take some time until this gets back, yeah, especially business travels. But the human being is a curious person, right? We are curious to see how it looks on the other end of the world, how people are there. And the human being is a social being. So connecting, and in a global world where parts of our family might be somewhere very different, I think it's not a structural problem. We would always want to travel for business and for leisure as well, and business travel as well. I mean, come on, are we gonna do Zoom so heavily like we did it the last months? I don't think so. There's one component which is not disputable. That's the human part, the interaction. How do you look in real life? How do you smell? does the where you are look like? So I think that's coming back. Will take some time though.
Thanks, Christian. I have another question, but I'll let the other guys go if there is more questions.
Yeah, I would have a practical question, Christian.
Good.
How important is the narrative? I mean, when you want to, when you present to your, let's say, top management an idea for getting funding, how important is how you know, the narrative around the story that you tell? Was it just based on numbers and you know, solid business case and very, very, you know?
No, I would say, I mean, that's when we present things. I mean, it already starts with we have established something that some call it growth board, we call it venture board, whatsoever, but it is a decision board where we present all the ideas, and then we go for no go, or retire or rework, right? So those are the possible outcomes. And actually, when preparing for these boards, it's the most essential part. What is the story, right? Whom are you selling it to? So it starts there. Who at the end is in the board? And the board certainly is my boss, which is the CTO. And then there's the one from the business unit where we say, hey, what we're proposing here will add value to your strategic direction. So that's how we think about it. If there's somebody, people always get excited about innovation and wow, this is great and blah. They will always say, does it cost me anything? No, great, go ahead and do it. And this was the biggest learning now from the past, saying like, you want this, you pay for it, right? It's like a venture capitalist. If you put skin in the game, you're on it. You're more committed than somebody else. Unfortunately, in the corporate environment, what doesn't cost anything has no value. And they will never say, no, don't do it. On the other hand, they will say, yeah, go for it. It doesn't cost anything for me. And that's just not tolerating and not valuable using the resources we have, both human capital and both financial resources. So that story has to fit. It has to fit into the strategy of my boss at the first, but at that person that is in the business unit. Now, if it's a topic that is very far from being within the business unit, you need either a big believer on us, and our CTO is a big believer on technologies of tomorrow. She is there because she's there. Or strategy, saying like, okay, urban air mobility, is this something we know? No. Is this something we want to get into? Yes. So what can we do then? And then you need a strategy on the table to define if you want to go into that field or not. Business case is always a hard one. Of course, you're going to have those big numbers on one slide. You need a really good team capable of pursuing this, and this means a good internal team that knows the technology and entrepreneurial talent from outside. This is going to be the execution part. So a good combination of both and a good knowledge of market, and then people believe in it. But especially having that passion for, look, this is something which has a huge business case and we're able to do it. If I said this at the beginning, if I would go there and pitch the next Tinder platform, it would be delusional to think that our company would be able to do it because it's not within our core competence. But decarbonizing the air, this is certainly something we can do, because that's what we think when putting it into the aircraft. But it doesn't need to fit into the aircraft. It could also be something like a refrigerator decarbonizing down there in the patio, right? So these are the things we are thinking about. I think in corporate innovation, a lot of people in the past tried to be disruptive and disrupt the mother. At the end, they all got killed, right? Because antibodies will just crush you, and this will not change. But if you say, hey, I take the capabilities of the company and re-orchestrate that, we think that will build a business around it, then you will get the buy-in. If you can then combine it to somebody saying like, look, I'm going to bring you growth to your unit, and you're going to shine. You're going to shine. You're going to be the innovator in this company. So pulling yourself a little bit back and putting that guy from the business unit in the center, that will really bring you a lot of commitment, buy-in, and has the highest rates of success. Now, from my experience, I'm sure I'm not the one knowing it all.
Yeah, excellent. Okay, thanks. Excellent answer.
You're welcome.
Any more questions?
Yeah, hi Christian. I have a question. Sorry,
Yeah.
I joined the conversation a little late. So my question is around what is your opinion on Uber Air, Uber Elevate, and do you see Boeing or Airbus ever doing anything like that? I mean, getting into that kind of space, or thinking long term.
I mean, I'm not that I know it exists. I know what they do. I know what their business model is. No, I'm not into the nitty-gritty details of Uber Elevate, right? So, as a disclaimer before, now I do believe that urban air mobility will come, right? At the moment, it's a little bit like VR and AR, right? It was coming, it was coming, it was coming, it never came. And now we're starting again. So I think just when is the timing right? And Uber, Elevate, and Volocopter, they're all pushing into the market, creating hardware and software solutions, which are great, right? Which are the right models, but still trying to adapt what we do with the public transport to air, right? So it's not as easy as that, because before this is reality, we need an adaptation of the regulatory environment to go that way. And who's going to build the ports where the eVTOLs will land, and who's going to create the services, who's going to create the platform? So I think it's still a long way to get there, and that's where we might be thinking, hey, we're good in the hardware, right? We totally savvy in that, and we know how to certify stuff. The market has to be made, and that's why I'm very happy that there are so many players pushing into that, because as I said before, we're not going to create the market ourselves. This is going to be something that the customer at the end wants. But let me ask you a question. Would you nowadays jump into an eVTOL that is autonomous? Right? I bet you would have your doubts on doing that. And there's a study out there where we're talking about single pilot operations, right? It's a no-brainer. Today you have two pilots. If you would have one, you would cut 50% costs of high pilot costs, right? And they're very costly. Now, the technology is there to even fly pilotless. Now, would the customers get into a pilotless aircraft? Let that sink. The answer is no. It will take 10 years. 10 years with incremental steps towards that until the customers, the passengers, would get into a pilotless aircraft. The technology is there already. It's the customer that is not yet there ready. And that's what I'm saying. Uber Elevate, the business model is the right one, the approach is the right one, the market is yet not there. And you know it from startups, if you're creating something for a market that is yet not there, you have to make it, or you have to wait until it's there. And that's where you then dry out. So it's good. I mean, they have a profitable business model, well, kind of profitable Uber with the gig economy. Now this would be the next logical step. It's still a little bit uncertain when this will come.
And as an extension of that, when you're thinking of interesting innovations or anything that would be a disruption, what factor or what percentage of just behavioral science plays a role in thinking through of an idea or the viability of it before you start thinking of just the technology solution or the business viability? I mean, is there a rule of thumb that you sort of apply or around that?
I'm going to try to give you an answer, and you interrupt me if it's not what you want to hear. What we know good is building technologies, right? And B2B businesses, not that much B2C. But from that perspective, when we think about, okay, we have identified a great technology, which could be, we could do this and that and that and that and whatsoever, right? And engineers start quickly assessing the possibility of what is technological possible. We always start with the question like, for whom are you doing this, right? Is there a really problem to this? And then really quickly get to the customer journey of the viability. And that's what I was talking at the before as well. There's a process, right? There's the desirability, there's feasibility, there's technical feasibility, and then there's making the market. And the process is built up like that. That desirability is at the beginning, that you know, is there somebody who would buy this, and what is the process that he would use this, right? If it's like with the eVTOL example, right? We could build the hardware and it will certainly fly. It will fly autonomously. I mean, we have done that with Vahana, but where will it land, right? There are no ports in the cities where this could land. There is no regulatory framework that allows these vehicles to fly. So what you were talking about, behavior, or what we call customer journey, is at the beginning of any discussion. Because then it comes, is there a context in doing this, in general context? And then there's a second phase afterwards where we say, is the context of our company able to do it, right? Is it what we want to do? Is it what we want to go there? So that's how we try to put those things we were thinking in the past. We would just build and then look for the market and the customer, putting that in front, because just wasting a lot of time on building stuff and bringing to market, whereas the first phases on really thinking who is your customer are very cost efficient, right? They're almost at zero cost. It's research, it's testing, it's hypothesis, and it's asking customers. Was that the answer you were looking for?
Yeah, no, I just wanted to sort of understand when in the journey does it come in. So yeah, it answers.
At the very beginning. At the very beginning, yeah.
Awesome, thanks.
Any more questions? Everybody's so quiet. I'm a bit concerned.
I have another question, Hugo. Christian, what's the future of the aviation? Which kind of services, features should we expect in the upcoming years?
I mean, at the moment,
what's Airbus doing at the moment? If you can unveil these kind of things.
Yeah, I mean the biggest feature got released a couple of weeks ago with the Zero-E strategy, right? So now putting up a new program that takes a lot of years. I mean, we're talking about 2035. I'm going to be 50 something when I will fly zero or emissionless, right? So that's just to understand how long it takes until something gets to market in this industry. With cars, it's a little bit earlier, it's 5 to 6 years. Aviation industry now is 10 years. But the good development until there is that it gives us time to research on, especially, and this is what drives the industry at the moment, sustainability as a whole, right? Not only hydrogen, not only engines, but everything, right? So the seats, the fuselage, the clips, whatsoever, everything to make it 100% either renewable, circular, or digestible, right, for the earth, because that's what I was saying. We are contributing to as any industry towards global warming, and this has to be a process that needs to be reversible. If we would just stop consuming our earth, this would be not enough to get to 2050. There are studies that would just eat up the world. So we have to make this even a reversible process, and only technology can get there. And on the way to 2035, we're going to create so many technologies that could serve as a different technology. So that is what's driving the aircraft industry. On the space side, it's all about really reusing as well, SpaceX-like, but also making it more viable to send things up in space. Starlink, OneWeb, we hear it, connectivity. Some have better chances than others to do it, the incumbents. They have not found their way right now. And at the moment, it's Starlink that could be the one being closest to connecting the unconnected, even better than a telco. It's a fascinating business model because you just cut 5 steps out of the telco business and place your satellite by yourself and then offer connectivity. Right, that is the unique business model of Starlink. So that's the space side. A lot of technologies naturally come out of the defense part, right? I mean, defense creates a lot of innovations that we can use then commercially, satellite technologies or space technologies. And in the vertical takeoff and landing space, also called helicopters, it's all about eVTOL. Like, will we fly electric? Will we fly with hydrogen? When does it make sense? The autonomous system around it and the systems around it. And this is a strong driver because this could be the entry point for mass market, right? If we unlock the third dimension, it could be like cars, right? Aircrafts, production rates are very low. And I mean, 2019, we sold something around 800 aircrafts, right? Compared to rates of BMW or Tesla, it's nothing, right? So urban air mobility could unlock this in creating a mass vehicle for a special regional transport. So that is a very important part, and it's key to our strategy to create, together with others, together with Lilium, together with Volocopter, the market for urban air mobility. Certainly, yes.
Stefan here. Christian, you mentioned that sustainability is quite important for your work. How do you utilize the SDG framework for your innovation and venturing activities?
How do we, sorry?
The SDG framework, the sustainability targets.
Okay, yeah. So, I mean, this movement started heavily, I think, when the world was still pink and unicorn land, like last year. Everybody was running on the SDGs, everybody was doing something sustainable, and every corporate put it on their website, right? So we took a look back then at this CSR approach, which is certainly valid, and then adjusted it to what we would do within the innovation unit, right? And we then developed a framework where we say we put this in figures of merit, right? What exactly does this mean for the environment if we do or not do this technology, if we build this venture or not build this venture, if we engage with this startup or not engage in this with the startup. So it started a little bit loose because then we saw, okay, every startup can put one of the SDGs on their pitch deck and they would commit to that. But we had very good people within the company, I would say true believers, that really then dig into it and said like, okay, what are you creating for the bigger societal good in this world? And there were a couple of projects from startups and from ourselves, which we did not do. They might have been profitable for sure. The market would have been attractive, but it's nothing what we would want to stand for within the company. So it's a whole framework that was derived from there. Also found these figures of merit on how to calculate and make this measurable. At the end, we kind of got also, I'm going to be completely honest with you, that we kind of got stuck into 3/4 of this because then with the crisis, other priorities, and nevertheless we deprioritized that and didn't perceive any new projects, but pushed those through that were already in the pipe and stopped those where we would say they're just too far to get to the market. But we really tried to take it from the CSR part to something where we can really say we create something really valuable there, up to a point where we said reduction of a number of tons on CO2 reduction per person within the innovation unit working on innovation projects. So we had it broken down to individual goals, putting them in also into the yearly what you call goal setting, right? And we kind of got stuck almost getting to the end, but which is certainly something we will keep on working as soon as waters get a little bit more easier to navigate.
Okay, thanks a lot.
There's a question here from Benedict. What's the secret of setting up a partnership, given the highly confident space you are working in?
Yeah, I mean, do you need your boss to pave you the ground, or can you pick up the cost? I mean, there are basically only big names out there in the aircraft business. Huh? It's not only that your company is like the big one and everybody's looking up to you. It's, you know, they are only big names. So how do you do it?
How do I engage partnerships?
Yeah. I mean, do you pick up your phone, the phone, and call a colleague in a let's say a partner company and say, hey, I have a great idea. Let's have a chat and let's develop this idea, or how does it work?
No, it's not like that. So you have to differentiate between the different degrees of partnerships we have, right? I mean, let's go through them. So sometimes we discover a challenge we have. It could be everything, right? And then we decide, we think about it. Is this maybe something a startup out there could solve? Then if it's something that a startup can solve, we look for it, we find it, we engage with them. And then we kind of create this buffer universum between the big corporate and the startup that they can work together, right? Which is sad but true, but you need this buffer unit because otherwise the misalignment is just huge. And also in regards of payments, procurement, legal, IT, you just name it. There are a lot of areas of tensions, as we call them, between them. But then we try to get the startup in. Normally start obviously with a proof of concept, and then our goal is to get it into the systems, right? So that is the approach where we go from a problem to finding a proper solution in terms of a startup technology. Whereas this also changed. If you take a look at how accelerators used to work a lot, is that they would look for XYZ startups coming from the solution side and then try to punch this startup in the corporate. And I don't know if you have kids, but there's this game with the kids where you have a bucket and there's a square and the round piece, right? It's putting like the round piece on the square, it will not fit, right? So that's what accelerators used to do in the past and why they were not very, very effective at the end. That's when we go with startups. Now, there are some solutions where we say, wow, okay, this is so specific, so compliant, or so key to our strategy that we have to build it ourselves, right? And that's when we then go into the mode of venture building or whatever you want to call it, company building. And then there's the one with the big ones. I mean, we do a lot of things with the competitors, with Boeing, with Lockheed Martin. When we say as an industry, we have to stand together and create this market. To stay with an example, we already talked about a lot in the past in this space here is UAM, right? Creating a market for urban air mobility is something where we, with our competitors, have to create the market, stand in there, to have a long-lasting revenue stream, right? And creating the market is regulatory a lot, so government has to create this. And this is where we, I would use the term lobby if it would not be a negative term, but this is where we talk with governments as a consortium to really create that market. That's normally driven by the big guys within the companies, where we say, yeah, we should do this, and then they put it one level, one layer down with management to really get to work. And that's where you then create the biggest partnerships. Now, the most effective partnerships is a different one, which I've seen with the suppliers, right? So actually, we are the client of our suppliers, and we are the customer at the end. So normally, big corporates send a specification. They say, I want this part like this and that, painted black. But now it's like, hey, why don't we go one step and put your team and my team together and think about how we can do this more effective and where the market goes, right? If we want to do hydrogen engines instead of kerosene engines, what are the airlines demanding? We know it, so we pass that information to you and go into co-creation. So this is a very nice space we're creating there, where we say with the suppliers, engaging in and that is at the heart what innovation is, right? Innovation per se should be open, otherwise it's not innovative. And co-creation just gives you a lot of effectiveness gains on how to do things, and it's customer centric per se. So engaging with suppliers has been a very effective tool here, like really asking them like, why do you do the things that you do, and they asking us like, how do you want us to do the things that you need? What are your customers really requiring? And I think, I mean, you see it. It's within the innovation journey. You will always have it there, customer centric, wherever you go. Otherwise, you're creating something like we did it 50 years ago. We thought someone would buy it. We were lucky enough that someone bought it, but it was nothing we would ask passengers now. Would you want to have an aircraft? There's this saying back then when they created the car. If you would ask, cannot recall it exactly. Maybe Hugo or somebody else, Stefan can help me. If you would ask people back then, what would you want to have? They would have said a faster horse or something like that, right?
It was like that precisely, yeah.
And then Ford created the T150, right? So it also has its tricky parts. To combine it with a question we had before, what is driving the industry? I mean, nowadays you jump into your car and your phone is immediately connected with the connectivity of your car. It plays your music. It sends you where you want to go because you looked it up in Google Maps before. Now that is not the case in the aircraft, right? In the aircraft, you still have a monitor there, which has an own operating system, where you have to use your headphones, which are from the 90s. And these are things that are yet not there. So that is also something. Quintino, I think you asked the question, what airlines are demanding, or at the end, what is the customer demanding? And me, for myself, I'm demanding the self. I come into an aircraft and I don't have to switch off anything or switch on or put these lousy headphones on. I can use the ones I have and then just watch my Netflix and hear at my Spotify playlist. So that is certainly something from the customer experience, very valuable. And the second one, while we're there, the passenger experience while boarding an aircraft. Right? It's not very pleasant. Right? You have to wait, then they call, then you stay in line again. Now, actually, with COVID, things got easier. Well, not many people are traveling. That's the first one, the obvious one. Well, that's not what I want to say, but that you say you start from the back line by line. And that's something I would say that my operating system is so smart that it puts my alarm in the morning at the time I have to wake up and go rise through until I'm sitting in the aircraft. That's something I would expect, right? And these are things we are actually working on connecting all those things. And actually airports and public transports are very disconnected from the rest of the passenger experience there. And it's also 160 passengers going through a little door like this. There are other ways to do that.
You talked about R&D. Now you are talking about passenger experience. Different innovation teams are all of these bets managed in a system, in a platform. how formal is this whole process managed, and how do you measure success?
So starting from the beginning, really focusing on the core competences of what our company can do, right? Really now more than ever setting the focus fields on where we think we could create new markets, right? Passenger experience, sustainability are two of them, where we see a lot of potential. Now, the ultimate KPI, I mean, there's hundreds of things you can measure which makes sense to measure for improving the system of your innovation unit. But at the end, the ultimate KPI is how much business do you create, how much revenue do you generate? Is it really an innovation? Because for me, an innovation is an invention plus business R&D plus execution, bringing it to the market, creating revenues. That's where, for me, an innovation stops, right? When you really get hard cash at the end. Then there are some other things you can call a ripple effect, which is cultural transformation, blah, government, brand, talent acquisition, whatsoever, which are sometimes shady, sometimes they make sense, but ripple effect of innovation. But at the end, I truly believe that you have to have the ambition to, as any other business unit within the corporation, like sales as well, to hit those targets. If you're talking about growth, it's growth in euros. And talking in industries such as the aircraft or the aerospace industry or the telco business, things get interesting when it's a double-digit million euros. And creating that from inside, from an animal that doesn't have the processes and the structures to do so, I think that's the hard thing when you're inside of a company, because you're battling two sides, your own color and then the market. As a startup, you're actually only battling the market. You don't have the resources. So that for me is the ultimate KPI. Revenue, internal efficiencies, whatever you can measure. And then there are some other things which are interesting. How much does it take? How long does it take you from idea to really hit the market? Right, speed is one thing that is very, very valuable. But that's the ultimate measurement, which in any innovation unit should be on the screen for everybody to see how much value are we adding. And if your CFO jumps in, he's going to ask that question like, I just know you from a big red number from my Excel file. What are you guys doing here, right? And I'm sure when times get bigger, get better, we're going to have that flexibility again to go more into exploring what is out there, what is high risk. But at the moment, it's not the time. At the moment, it's time to refocus.
Yeah, I do agree with you. But when I talk with corporate innovators, they are always concerned about how to show they are adding value. So this is always a question I like to ask. And you said something very important, that the investor in this case is the company.
Yeah.
So not to know where the money is flowing.
Yeah. There's one question here in the chat from Karen that's related to Uber Elevate, Uber Air. Google a little bit about Airbus and Voom. We have done that, right? Now it's on you to decide why it didn't got rolled out globally. But that's what I'm saying. The technology is there. Sometimes the context is not the best.
You've also talked about talent. It's hard to attract talent to large organizations to work in corporate innovation. How can we change that? I know, but I know a few friends that applied for jobs in large organizations in the innovation space, and even the recruiter doesn't understand what they do. So it's kind of hard to explain how the innovation world works if even the recruiter doesn't understand how it works. But you just know how the normal world works, projects, outcomes, and things like that. But when you talk about, you mentioned hypotheses in running experiments and all of that, Is recruitment a problem? It's like boarding into the airplane. The experience starts before we jump into the airplane. Where is the problem? Why is it so hard to bring entrepreneurial talent to large organizations for corporate venturing?
Well, because at the end, you're not going to have the level of freedom and the degree of freedom you as an entrepreneurial mindset will want to have, right? If you used to take your own decisions and giving it the strategic direction you want to go, then the corporate is certainly not a good place for you to be. You have to make compromises. You have to know the political game. You have to understand what the context is. You have to get along with people you will not like, right? And you will have to fire people you like. So all that context makes it really hard for people that come from that background to really set foot into a corporate and get there. I mean, people are asking me how long I'm staying still, right? But I must say, I mean, I started creating 2 companies. This was 10 years ago, right? I probably am now more corporate than I was 10 years ago. Now I also have family, and it was a fun ride, but also high risk. So that is also a reason why people then want to engage in the corporate, saying like, okay, I want more the safer side of life, but then you have to deal with compromises. And a corporation doesn't have the processes to give entrepreneurs what they want, a level of freedom. And if you create something great, a venture that really creates this double-digit revenue, you don't want to be on the payroll anymore. You want to run this company, and you want to have a piece of the pie. So again, coming from structures and processes, and this is one of the biggest battles we are having, to have an HR recruiter that understands what we're doing, to have an HR recruiter that also finds that talent, right? It's not going to be the corporate recruiter that gets this talent, and then having also an incentive model that is off from yearly goals or any performance-based metrics that are not a success or not success of your venture. So it's very 2 different roles that might fit depending on what stage of your personal journey you are, but it's not the normal thing that entrepreneurs end up in big companies. Same the other way around. More probable, but not very high.
No, indeed, definitely. And I guess we are running out of time. Everybody's now thinking about the next call. I would like to say thank you to Christian in particular for your time and energy. I think this was another masterclass here at Innovation Cafe without any kind of slides, which is just perfect, right? And thank you to all the participants that also joined the session, okay? The video will be on YouTube, and hope to see you all, including you, Christian.
Sure.
Next week, just walk into the cafe and feel free to share your thoughts, okay?
Perfect. Many thanks for the invite. It was a big pleasure, and many thanks for all those questions, like being challenged.
Thanks, Christian. Thank you all, and hope to see you next week. Goodbye. Thank you.
Take care.
Thanks, Christian.
Stay safe.
Thanks, Hugo.
Stay safe. Bye-bye.
Bye.